Welcome to Dusk Tales. Here we explore ranger stories, deep forest encounters, and the unexplained events that happen far from civilization. Stories from those who entered the wilderness and experienced something they still can't explain. If you enjoy atmospheric horror and immersive storytelling, subscribe and join us. New stories are waiting in the dark. I didn't believe in omens, spirits, or anything that couldn't be fixed with a wrench, until the night something ran beside me through the Oregon woods and kept pace with me like it had all the time in the world. Everything I thought I understood about the world shifted, quietly, patiently, on a rain-soaked stretch of forest road. Because what I encountered that night didn't just chase me. It waited, and I've never been completely certain it stopped. Let me take you back to that evening. My name is Matthew Callahan. In 1992, I was 30 years old and living what most people would call a steady life in Cottage Grove, Oregon. If you've never been there, picture a small town wrapped in timber. The air always carried the scent of cut wood and damp soil. Pickup trucks outnumbered sedans. People waved when they passed you, even if they didn't know your name. I worked at a lumber mill just outside town. The days were long, loud, and honest. Saw blades whining, logs rolling down conveyors, the rhythm of labor so constant you could almost set your heartbeat to it. Emily, my wife, taught at the elementary school. We'd been married 4 years. No kids yet, but we talked about it. We had a modest house near the edge of town, a small porch, a swing we rarely used but always meant to. It was simple, comfortable, predictable. And maybe that's why the memory of that night stands out so sharply. Because it split that comfort in two. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were usually slower at the mill. By the time I clocked out around 6, the sun was still hanging high, heavy with summer heat. I drove home with the windows down, arm resting on the door of my 1990 Ford F-150 XLT. Cherry red, chrome trim, only 2 years old at the time. I'd worked overtime nearly every weekend in 1990 to afford it. I pulled into the driveway, planning on a shower and dinner. Before I even stepped inside, the house phone rang. Emily answered first. I heard her tone shift from casual to concerned in seconds. "Matthew?" she called. "It's Aunt Margaret." I wiped my hands on my jeans and picked up the extension. Her voice sounded thin, unsteady. "It's John," she said. "He's not well. He collapsed this morning. He's awake now, but the doctor isn't sure. We thought you should come." My Uncle John was 60, broad-shouldered, weathered, stubborn. He lived several miles outside Cottage Grove, on a piece of land surrounded almost entirely by forest. He'd inherited it from my grandpa, old farmhouse. Barn leaning slightly to the left, a long gravel driveway that kicked up dust in the summer. After my father passed when I was 12, Uncle John filled the space. He taught me how to split wood, how to drive a manual transmission, how to fix a fence properly instead of patching it. If he needed me, I was going. "I'll be there," I said. Emily squeezed my arm. "Call me when you get there." I nodded, grabbed my keys, and headed back out. The road to Uncle John's place started as pavement, then gradually narrowed into a winding 2-lane stretch cutting through thick Douglas fir and cedar. The trees stood tall and close, like they were guarding something deeper within. Sunlight filtered through in long golden beams. I drove faster than usual, my thoughts racing. 60 wasn't that old. But out there, on land like his, you never knew. A fall, a stroke, something sudden. The forest seemed unusually still that evening. No birds crossing the road, no deer darting out, just quiet. When I turned onto his gravel driveway, I saw 4 cars already parked outside. My cousin's, the neighbor's pickup, my aunt's old station wagon. I braced myself before going in. I stepped inside expecting the worst. Instead, I found Uncle John sitting upright in his armchair near the fireplace, a blanket draped over his knees, looking sheepish. "Well," he said when he saw me, "they made it sound like I was halfway to the grave." Aunt Margaret shot him a look. The story came out in pieces. According to my aunt, and reluctantly confirmed by John, he'd spent the previous evening sampling a new batch of homemade whiskey with a neighbor. Combined with the heat and not enough water, he'd gotten severely dehydrated. That morning, he'd felt dizzy and fainted briefly. The local doctor had come by, checked him over, and reportedly found no serious issue, just dehydration and exhaustion. By the time I arrived, color had returned to his face. He was weak, but alert, talking, even joking. The relief hit me like a wave. I hugged him harder than I meant to. He chuckled. "I'm not going anywhere yet, Matt." And for a while, it truly felt like he wasn't. Relief has a strange way of turning into celebration. By sunset, someone fired up the grill. My cousins brought out folding chairs. Laughter drifted into the yard. We told old stories. John talked about the first truck he ever owned, a beat-up Chevy that barely ran, but had character. He teased me about babying my Ford. "You keep it that clean," he said. "It'll never learn to work." The air cooled as the sky darkened. Stars began to prick through the fading blue. A light drizzle started around 10, soft and steady, tapping against the barn roof. I remember thinking how perfect it all felt. Family safe, summer night, the smell of light rain mixing with charcoal smoke. If I had known what the next hour held, I might have stayed longer, or maybe I would have left earlier. I still don't know which would have changed things. It was a little after midnight when I said goodbye. Uncle John gripped my shoulder. "Drive safe." "I always do," I told him. I climbed into the Ford. The engine turned over strong. Headlights sliced through the misting rain. The gravel driveway gave way to pavement. The forest swallowed the road again. Rain streaked across the windshield. Wipers moved in a steady rhythm. About 10 minutes in, the truck gave a small shudder. I frowned. Probably nothing. Then it shuddered again. The dashboard lights flickered briefly, and the engine died. No warning, no loud noise, just silence. The truck coasted to a stop. I sat there staring at the steering wheel, confused. It was practically new. I turned the key. Click. Again. Click. The rain picked up slightly, tapping harder against the roof. I tried 5 more times. Nothing. The forest felt closer somehow. No headlights behind me, no distant traffic, just darkness pressing in from both sides. I checked the gas gauge. Half tank. No warning lights had come on before it died. After a few more attempts, I accepted it wasn't restarting. Cottage Grove was roughly an hour's walk ahead. Uncle John's place was farther back. I grabbed my jacket, locked the truck, and started walking. At first, it wasn't frightening. The rain was mild, the air cool against my skin. My boots thudded against wet pavement in a steady rhythm. I told myself it was inconvenient, nothing more. About 5 minutes in, I noticed a figure ahead of me. Tall, walking in the same direction. I slowed instinctively. Had someone else's car broken down? I hadn't seen headlights pass me. Maybe he'd come from one of the old logging roads that branched deeper into the forest. "Evening?" I called out. no response. The figure kept walking. He wore a long black coat, odd for summer, and a hood pulled up. I felt relief more than anything. Another person meant help, potentially. I quickened my pace. Car trouble? I tried again. Nothing. His stride was smooth, measured. I moved faster to pass him, and that's when something subtle shifted. No matter how I adjusted my pace, he remained exactly beside me. Not ahead, not behind, beside, always just at the edge of my vision. I slowed. He slowed. I sped up. He matched me precisely. Rain slid down my neck. My heartbeat began to climb, not from exertion, but from confusion. "Look," I said, forcing a small laugh. "I'm just trying to get home." Silence. The forest seemed to absorb sound. Even the rain felt muted. I had a short temper, and this weird man ran my nerves by not saying anything. "Could you at least say something?" Nothing. I stopped walking entirely. He stopped too. That's when unease turned into something heavier. "Would you just let me walk?" I snapped. For a second, there was only rain. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached up and pulled back his hood. When he pulled back the hood, time didn't stop. It stretched. The way moments do when your mind is trying to understand something it has no category for. Where a human face should have been, there was the pale structure of a skull. Not damaged, not decayed, smooth and bone white beneath the rain. The surface caught faint reflections from the distant glow of the cloud-covered moon. Along the jawline was a short beard, white but not like ordinary hair. It looked like frost clinging to winter branches, as if cold itself had taken shape. There were no eyes, at least none I could see, but I felt watched. The sound came next, a low, hollow laugh, not loud, not explosive, measured, layered, as if it echoed from somewhere deeper than the forest around us. Every instinct in my body told me something simple. Run. But for one suspended second, I couldn't move. The rain tapped steadily around us. The trees loomed tall and indifferent. Then the figure tilted its head slightly, almost curious, and stepped toward me. That broke whatever paralysis held me. I turned and ran. I've replayed that first sprint in my head 1,000 times over the years. Boots striking wet pavement. Arms pumping harder than they ever had. Breath ripping through my throat. I expected to hear heavy footsteps behind me. Instead, I heard something worse. Nothing. No splashing, no breathing. Just that distant, hollow laugh drifting through the rain. I risked the smallest glance over my shoulder. He was there. Not running, gliding. Matching my speed without visible effort, the long black coat barely shifting, the white skull steady, the frost-like beard unmoving despite the rain. I pushed harder. My lungs burned. The road curved slightly, and for a moment trees blocked my view. Maybe he'd vanish. Maybe he wasn't real. Maybe. When the road straightened, he was beside me again, exactly beside me. As if distance meant nothing. I stumbled on a slick patch of pavement but caught myself. And that's when I felt it. Cold fingers, brief, around my ankle. Not gripping hard enough to pull me down completely, but enough to make contact. The temperature of it shocked me more than the touch. It wasn't just cold, it felt empty, like reaching into air that had never known warmth. I kicked forward instinctively and regained balance. I didn't look back again, I just ran. The laughter grew slightly louder, not mocking, not angry, patient, like someone watching a clock tick down. At some point, my world narrowed to 3 things. The road in front of me, the The sound of my own breath. The awareness that something was keeping pace. The forest blurred into dark vertical streaks. Rain plastered my shirt to my skin. My legs screamed with fatigue. I don't know how long I ran. 5 minutes? 15? An hour? Time dissolved into instinct. There were moments when the figures seemed directly behind me, so close I could feel that unnatural cold at my back. Then suddenly beside me again, then just slightly ahead, as if predicting my path. It never lunged, never rushed. It simply stayed there. And somehow that was worse. I remember thinking, very clearly, this thing doesn't need to catch me. It's waiting for something. But for what? The thought nearly stopped me in my tracks. That's when I saw them. Headlights. 2 bright beams cutting through the rain from ahead. For a split second, I wondered if they were real. I blinked hard. They remained. A car coming toward me. I waved frantically, stumbling into the middle of the road. The vehicle screeched to a stop a few yards away. I turned once, just once, to see if the figure still followed. The road behind me was empty. No black coat, no skull, no frost-white beard. Just rain and trees. The car's engine idled loudly. A blue sedan, older model. Windows slightly fogged. 3 young men stared at me from inside, early 20s maybe. Baseball caps, confused expressions. I must have looked wild, soaked, mud-streaked, breathing like I'd run a marathon. I placed my hands on the hood to steady myself. "Please," I managed. "You have to let me in." They exchanged glances but didn't argue. The passenger in the front unlocked the door. I slid inside, still shaking. "What happened to you?" the driver asked. "Car broke down," I said automatically. "Up the road." They looked at each other again. "You were running like someone was chasing you." I opened my mouth, closed it. There are moments when the truth feels impossible to say out loud. "I thought I heard something," I said instead. They nodded slowly, not pressing further. As we drove, I stared out the back window. The road stretched behind us, empty and quiet. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something stood just beyond the reach of the headlights. Watching. Not angry. Not hurried. Just aware. "Hospital's closer than town," one of them said finally. "You look like you took a fall or something." Only then did I notice the sting along my forearms. My knees ached. When I touched my cheek, my fingers came away slightly red. I must have stumbled more than I realized. "Yeah," I said faintly. "Hospital's fine." The emergency room lights felt too bright, too clean. Reality rushed back in waves. Nurses asked questions. Doctors checked my pupils, blood pressure, pulse. "Do you remember what happened?" one asked calmly. "Yes," I said. I remembered every second, but I didn't say that. Instead, I told them the version that made sense. Car trouble, a couple drinks earlier at my uncle's, walking home in the rain, slipped a few times, got turned around briefly. The 3 young men confirmed they found me running and disoriented, but didn't mention seeing anyone else, because they hadn't. The doctor nodded thoughtfully. "Dehydration, fatigue, maybe a bit of adrenaline," he said. "You're lucky those boys came along." Lucky, that's one word for it. They cleaned minor scrapes, wrapped my knee, took a few precautionary scans. Nothing serious, just bruising, exhaustion. Sometime near dawn, I finally fell asleep. When I woke up, sunlight filtered softly through hospital blinds. Emily sat beside the bed, holding a paper cup of coffee gone cold. Her eyes were red from worry. "You scared me," she whispered. "I'm okay," I said. And physically, I was. She asked what happened. I repeated the safe story. Car trouble, rain, clumsy fall. She studied me carefully, but didn't push. Later that afternoon, they discharged me. Emily drove us home. The forest along the road looked ordinary in daylight, peaceful, harmless, as if it had never held anything else. When we got home, I told Emily I needed a shower. The hot water stung against scrapes I barely remembered getting. Steam filled the bathroom. After drying off, I stepped toward the mirror and stopped. Near my right temple, just above the ear, were several thin streaks of white. Not gray, white, sharp against the brown of my hair. I leaned closer. They hadn't been there the day before. Emily noticed too when I stepped out. She touched them gently. "Maybe stress," she said softly. According to what I've since read, extreme shock can reportedly cause sudden whitening in patches, the body responding to trauma. That's what I told myself. That's still what I tell myself. 2 days later, I had the Ford towed. The mechanic, a man I'd known for years, ran diagnostics, checked the battery, alternator, fuel lines, starter. He shook his head. "Started right up for me," he said. "Can't find a thing wrong with it." I didn't know what to say. It had died. Completely. In the middle of the road. But there was no record of failure. No explanation. I paid him and drove it home. It ran smoothly, perfectly, as if nothing had ever happened. Life resumed its routine. Work, dinner, weekends at Uncle John's. But something had shifted. I found myself listening more closely to silence, watching tree lines longer than necessary. On rainy nights, when drops tapped against our windows in steady rhythm, I would wake suddenly, heart racing, for no clear reason. Sometimes I would think I heard something beneath the rain. Not loud, not clear, just familiar. A low echo carried by memory. I never told anyone the full truth. Not the doctors. Not my cousins. For months, not even Emily. Because saying it out loud made it real. And I wasn't sure I was ready for that. It was late autumn when I finally told her. Rain again, ironically. We were sitting at the kitchen table. I don't know what pushed me. Maybe the way she'd been watching me lately, like she sensed something unspoken. I didn't just fall, I said quietly. She set down her mug, and I told her everything. The figure, the skull, the frost-white beard, the laughter, the way it matched my stride exactly. She didn't interrupt, didn't dismiss it. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "I believe that you experienced something," she said carefully. Not that it was supernatural, not that it wasn't. Just that it happened to me. And somehow, that was enough. Years have passed since that night in 1992. Uncle John lived another decade before passing peacefully in his sleep. The forest road is still there. I've driven it many times since, in daylight, even at night. Nothing unusual has happened again. No stalled engine, no figure in black. But sometimes, when rain begins softly and steadily, I feel that same prickle at the back of my neck. Not fear exactly. Recognition. Like something once measured my pace and decided that, for now, it didn't need to finish the walk. I don't claim to know what followed me on that road outside Cottage Grove. Stress and exhaustion can reportedly distort perception. Fear can magnify shadows. The human mind is capable of powerful imagery when pushed to its limits. That's the explanation I've lived with. But here's what I know for certain. My truck stopped without reason. 3 strangers found me running like my life depended on it. And by morning, my hair had changed. Some events don't fit neatly into understanding. They simply sit with you, quiet, patient, Thank you for listening to Dusk Tales. If you enjoyed this story, consider subscribing for more ranger encounters, deep woods stories, and unexplained experiences from the wilderness. And if you have your own story you'd like to share, you can send it to the email in the description. The forest holds more secrets than we understand. And sometimes, those secrets follow people home. Until next time, stay safe and stay out of the dark.